Echoes of a fallen world, the viewing port of Station Terminus 7 offered the same depressing vista every morning, endless black void punctuated by debris from forgotten battles. Princess Nera Valtis pressed her palm against the cold transparasteel, watching fragments of destroyed ships drift past like metallic snow. 3 years had passed since the fall of Lumenus. 3 years since she'd watched her crystalline homeworld shatter under the relentless bombardment of the Obsidian fleet. 3 years since she'd lost everything that mattered. "Your Highness, you have visitors," came the gravelly voice of Thane, her last remaining advisor. The elderly Lumenian's once brilliant skin had dulled to a pale blue. The crystal formations along his temples cracked from stress and grief. Stood in the doorway of her modest quarters, his weathered face bearing news she could already sense was unwelcome. Nera turned from the viewport, smoothing down the simple gray jumpsuit that had replaced her royal robes. "Who?" "Bounty hunters. They claim to have information about Captain Corrin." The name hit her like a physical blow. Dex Corrin, the human mercenary who had somehow become so much more than her hired guardian. The man who had vanished during the final hours of her world's destruction, leaving behind only questions and a hollow ache in her chest that refused to heal. "Send them in," she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. The two figures who entered couldn't have been more different. The first was a tall, lean woman with short-cropped black hair and the confident stride of someone accustomed to violence. The second was smaller, nervous, with the pale complexion of someone who spent too much time in ship corridors. "Your Highness," the woman said with a mocking bow. "I'm Zara Ming, formerly of the Earth Defense Corps. This is my associate, Riggs. We served with Dex Corrin before he took up babysitting royalty." Nera felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her expression neutral. "You said you have information about him." Zara produced a small hollow projector and activated it. The image that materialized made Nera's breath catch. Dex, but not as she remembered. Him. His sandy hair was longer, unkempt, and his usually clean-shaven face bore a ragged beard. Most disturbing were his eyes, filled with a haunted exhaustion she'd never seen before. "This was recorded 2 weeks ago on Kepler Station," Zara continued. "Dex contacted me through old military channels. He's been captured by the Obsidian fleet." "That's impossible," Thane interjected. "The Obsidian fleet operates in the void sectors. No one survives their interrogation centers." "Apparently your boy Dex is tougher than most," Riggs spoke for the first time, his voice high and nasal. "But he won't last much longer. Commander Voss has been creative in his questioning methods." Nera closed her eyes, trying to push away images of what that might mean. "What does he want?" "The location of the crystal cores," Zara said grimly. "The ones that survived Lumenus's destruction." The room fell silent. Nera felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. The crystal cores were the heart of her people's technology, capable of storing and channeling vast amounts of energy. In the wrong hands, they could power weapons of unimaginable destruction. "There are no surviving cores," she lied smoothly. "They were all destroyed when the planet—" "Cut the act, Princess," Zara interrupted. "Dex already told us the truth. You evacuated 12 cores before the final assault, hidden them somewhere safe. Now Voss wants them, and he's willing to torture your guardian until you give them up." Nera's composure finally cracked. "He's not my guardian anymore. He left. When I needed him most, he left." "He didn't leave," Zara said, her voice softening slightly. "He was captured trying to delay the Obsidian fleet's pursuit of your evacuation ships. Bought you an extra 3 hours to escape. We thought he was dead until this message came through. The Mayday revelation staggered Nera. For 3 years, she'd carried the bitter pain of abandonment, believing Dex had chosen his own survival over his duty to her people. The truth was somehow worse. He'd sacrificed himself, and she'd never known. "Show me the message," she whispered. Zara activated the projector again. This time, Dex's voice emerged from the static. "Zara, if you're receiving this, I need you to find Princess Nira. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise. Voss has me, and he knows about the cores. He's building something, a weapon that makes the planet crackers look like firecrackers. If he gets those cores, entire systems will burn." The image flickered as explosions sounded in the background. "I bought some time by giving him false coordinates, but it won't last. Nira has to destroy the cores before..." The transmission cut to static. "That was 2 weeks ago," Zara said. "We've been tracking Obsidian fleet movement since then. They're heading toward the Helios Nebula, probably to rendezvous with their weapon platform." "Then we destroy the cores," Nira said immediately. "If they're that dangerous." "Princess," Thane interrupted gently, "those cores are the only hope your people have of rebuilding. They contain the genetic templates, the cultural archives, the technological blueprints of our entire civilization. Destroy them, and the Lumenian race dies with you." Nira sank into a chair, the weight of impossible choices crushing down on her. Save Dex and risk galactic genocide, or preserve her people's future and let the man she loved die in agony. "There's a third option," Zara said, reading her expression. "We get him back." "From the Obsidian fleet?" Thane scoffed. "They command over 300 ships, battle-hardened veterans who've conquered dozens of worlds. We have what? A handful of refugees. And obsolete equipment? We have something they don't," Nira said slowly, an idea forming. "We know where the cores are hidden. Voss wants them badly enough to keep Dex alive this long. That gives us leverage." "You're talking about walking into a trap," Zara warned. "I'm talking about springing one." Nira stood, feeling purpose flow through her for the first time in years. "Thane, contact Captain Holloway on the merchant vessel Stardancer. Tell him I'm calling in the favor he owes me. Zara, I'll need your ship and your weapons expertise." "What about payment?" Riggs squeaked. "Bounty hunting doesn't come free." Nira smiled grimly. "Help me get Dex back alive, and I'll give you the location of the Lumenian Royal Treasury. Enough platinum and rare elements to buy your own fleet." Zara and Riggs exchanged glances. "You're serious about this rescue mission?" "Dead serious." Nira moved to her personal storage locker and withdrew the only thing of value she'd managed to save from Lumenis, a crystal pendant that pulsed with inner light. "This contains the real coordinates to the core cache. Voss gets it only after we have Dex back safely." "And if the rescue fails?" Thane asked quietly. Nira closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling its warmth against her palm. "Then I activate the self-destruct sequence I built into the containment field. The cores, the archives, everything, gone in an instant. Better to die as the last of our kind than to live knowing we enabled mass murder." The room fell silent as the magnitude of her commitment sank in. She was willing to gamble the future of her entire species on the slim chance of saving one man. "Why?" Zara asked. "Why risk everything for him?" Nira looked out at the star field, remembering the way Dex used to stand watch at her chamber doors. The quiet strength in his voice when he'd promised to protect her people. The moment their eyes had met across a crowded ballroom and she'd realized that somewhere between duty and friendship, she'd fallen in love. Because 3 years ago, I was the princess who needed a guardian. Now I'm the woman who's going to save the man she loves, no matter what it costs. She turned back to face them, her violet eyes blazing with determination. "We leave in 6 hours. Start preparing your ship, Captain Ming. We're going to war." The price of redemption. The Obsidian Fleet's mobile fortress hung in space like a metallic cancer, its black hull bristling with weapon arrays and docking bays. From the bridge of Zara's modified corvette, the Nighthawk, Nira studied the massive, structure through tactical displays, her heart hammering against her ribs. Readings show approximately 50,000 personnel aboard, reported Captain Holloway from the Stardancer, his weathered face grim on the comm screen. Princess, this is madness. My merchant vessel wasn't designed for combat. Which is exactly why it's perfect, Neera replied, adjusting the simple maintenance coveralls that disguised her royal bearing. They won't see a cargo hauler as a threat. Once you're docked, create a distraction in the lower bays while we infiltrate the detention levels. Zara checked her weapon harnesses one final time. Thermal scans show the prison sector here. She pointed to a section deep within the fortress's core. Heavily shielded, multiple guard stations. Getting in will be hard enough. Getting out, with a prisoner, will be nearly impossible. We're not just extracting one prisoner, Neera said quietly. Intelligence suggests they have dozens of captured scientists and engineers from conquered worlds. We free them all. Thane looked up from the communication console where he'd been monitoring Obsidian fleet frequencies. Your Highness, perhaps we should reconsider. If something happens to you, then you ensure the crystal cores are destroyed, Neera cut him off. No matter what. The old advisor's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. They all knew the stakes. Incoming transmission from the fortress, Riggs announced, his nervous fingers dancing over the controls. They're hailing us. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred face of Commander Voss. His cybernetic eye glowed red as it focused on Neera, and his lips curved into a predatory smile. Princess Neera Valthis, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a curse. How delightfully predictable. You've come for your pet human. I've come to negotiate, Neera replied, keeping her voice steady despite the chill that ran down her spine. You want the crystal cores. I want Captain Corrin. We can make a deal. Voss laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Oh, we'll make a deal, Princess, but not the one you think. You see, your guardian has been quite informative during his stay with us. We know about the 12 cores, their potential applications, and most importantly, we know you're the only one who can access them. The screen split, showing a second image that made Neera's blood freeze. Dex hung suspended in some kind of energy restraint field, his body bearing the visible marks of systematic torture. But his eyes, when they found the camera, still held a spark of defiance. Neera, he said, his voice hoarse but urgent. Don't give them what they want. Whatever it costs. The image cut off as energy arced through the restraint field. Dex's scream echoed through the Nighthawk's bridge before the audio was mercifully muted. As you can see, Voss continued conversationally, Captain Corrin's continued well-being depends entirely on your cooperation. You will board my flagship, surrender the cores, and watch as we demonstrate their power on that pathetic refugee station you call home. Only then will I consider ending his suffering. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. He's lying, Zara said finally. Even if you give him what he wants, he'll kill you both. I know. Neera's hands trembled as she reached for the crystal pendant around her neck. But he made one mistake. He thinks the cores are just weapons. She activated the pendant's emergency beacon, sending a coded signal into the void. Thane, remember the fail-safe protocols we built into the core containment systems? The old advisor's eyes widened. The resonance cascade? But Princess, if you trigger that, the cores will overload in sequence, yes, creating a subspace pulse that will disable every ship within 50 light years. Neera smiled grimly. Including us. That's suicide, Holloway protested from the comm. That's justice. Neera stood, checking the pulse pistol at her hip. Voss wants to use our people's legacy to commit genocide. Better to die ensuring it can never happen. Zara studied her for a long moment. You're not planning to die, are you? You have another play. Neera didn't answer directly. Instead, she pulled up the fortress schematics. The weapon Dex mentioned, it has to be here. In the central core section, if we can reach it before the cascade completes, we might be able to redirect the pulse, Thane finished, understanding dawning. In his eyes, channel it through their own weapon to amplify the effect. Riggs, how long until the merchant ships reach docking range? Neera asked. 15 minutes, came the squeaky reply. Then we have 15 minutes to save the galaxy. Neera activated the ship's internal comm. All teams, prepare for infiltration. Remember, we're not just rescuing Dex. We're ending the Obsidian Fleet's reign of terror forever. The next few minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons were checked, explosives distributed, and final messages recorded for loved ones who might never see them again. As they approached the fortress, Neera found herself thinking not of the massive ship bearing down on them, but of a quiet moment 3 years ago when Dex had found her crying in the palace gardens after a particularly brutal attack on her people. "We'll get through this," he'd said simply, offering her his jacket against the crystalline world's eternal twilight. Together. She'd wanted to tell him then how she felt, but duty and protocol had held her tongue. Now, hurtling toward what might be their final battle, she swore she wouldn't make that mistake again. The Star Dancer's docking was flawless, Holloway's reputation as a smuggler serving them well as he talked his way past security checkpoints. Within minutes, controlled explosions began echoing through the fortress's lower levels as his crew created the promised distraction. Neera and Zara slipped through maintenance shafts, following the thermal signatures that led toward the detention block. The fortress's corridors were a maze of black metal and pulsing red lights, designed to intimidate and disorient prisoners. But Neera had grown up in the crystal spires of Lumenis. She understood how architecture could be used as a weapon. "Movement ahead," Zara whispered, raising her rifle. They pressed against the corridor wall as a patrol of obsidian soldiers marched past, their heavy boots ringing against the deck plating. When the sound faded, they continued deeper into the ship's heart. The detention level was everything Neera had feared, row after row of energy cells containing the broken remnants of conquered civilizations. Scientists, engineers, artists, and scholars from a dozen worlds, all being slowly drained of their knowledge before execution. There, Zara pointed to a cell at the far end. Bio readings match Corran's profile. Neera's heart clenched as she saw him properly for the first time in 3 years. Dex had always been lean, but now he was gaunt, his body bearing the systematic cruelty of professional interrogators. When she touched the cell's control panel, his eyes opened and focused on her with difficulty. "Neera." His voice was barely a whisper. "You shouldn't have come." "Shut up," she said, working frantically to override the locking mechanism. "We're getting you out of here." "The cores," he insisted, struggling to sit up. "They're building something called the Star Crusher, weapon platform the size of a moon, with your crystals powering it." "I know." The lock disengaged with a soft hiss. "It's already too late, Dex. I've triggered the failsafe." His eyes widened. "The Cascade Protocol? Neera, that will kill everyone in the system." "Yes." She helped him to his feet, surprised by how much weight he'd lost. "Unless we can reach their weapon and redirect the pulse." Alarms began wailing throughout the fortress as Zara systematically freed the other prisoners. "Company's coming," she announced, tossing pulse rifles to those strong enough to fight. "Can you walk?" Neera asked Dex. He managed a weak smile. "For you? I can run." They fought their way through corridor after corridor, the freed prisoners adding their own desperate fury to the battle. Many fell, too weak from captivity to sustain the pace, but others pressed on, driven by the chance for revenge against their captors. The weapon chamber was a cathedral of destruction, its walls lined with crystal matrices that pulsed with familiar blue energy. At the center stood a massive targeting array pointed toward a holographic display showing the galaxy's spiral arms. 12 target zones, Dex said, reading the tactical displays with professional efficiency despite his condition. Population centers. They're planning to sterilize entire sectors. Commander Voss emerged from the shadows, flanked by his personal guard. Ingenious, Princess. Trigger your little cascade weapon, then redirect it through our systems to amplify the effect. You'd kill billions to save trillions. Better than letting you murder them all slowly, Nira replied, raising her weapon. Perhaps, but you've made one critical error. Voss smiled coldly. The cascade has already begun, but I've modified the targeting system. Instead of disabling our ships, your precious pulse will be channeled directly into the Star Crusher's main weapon. Every crystal core explosion will add to our firepower. By trying to destroy us, you've given us enough energy to crack stars themselves. The truth hit Nira like a physical blow. She'd played right into his hands, turning her people's final legacy into the instrument of galactic genocide. No, Dex said suddenly, moving toward the central control console. There's still a way. Dex, don't. He was already at the controls, his fingers flying over interfaces despite the weakness in his limbs. Manual override, he explained through gritted teeth. I can reverse the pulse direction, send it back through the crystal matrix. It'll overload the entire weapon. That's suicide, Voss snarled, raising his own weapon. The feedback will vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers. I know. Dex looked back at Nira, and for a moment his eyes held all the warmth she remembered. I kept my promise before. Bought you time to escape. Let me do it again. Not. Without me, Nira said, moving to stand beside him at the console. We do this together. Their hands met on the activation controls as Voss opened fire. Energy bolts seared the air around them, but Zara and the other freed prisoners had formed a protective circle, returning fire with desperate accuracy. I should have told you, Nira said as warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. 3 years ago, I should have told you how I felt. Dex smiled, his finger hovering over the final activation switch. You just did. The pulse wave erupted outward from the crystal matrices, a cascade of blue-white energy that consumed the weapon chamber, then the fortress, then spread to engulf every ship in the Obsidian fleet. For a moment, that lasted eternity. Space itself seemed to burn with the dying light of Lumenis. When consciousness returned, Nira found herself floating in an escape pod, surrounded by the scattered debris of what had once been the galaxy's most feared armada. Through the viewport, she could see other pods, survivors from both sides, suspended in the sudden peace that followed annihilation. Status report, came Zara's voice over the comm, strained but alive. Fortress destroyed, reported Holloway. Obsidian fleet, gone. All of it. Dex? Nira called, scanning the emergency frequencies. Silence stretched for long seconds before a familiar voice answered, weak but unmistakably real. Still here, Princess. Still keeping promises. Relief flooded through her as she spotted his pod, battered but intact, drifting nearby. The cores! Completely discharged, Thane's voice joined the conversation. The cascade consumed them entirely. There's nothing left to rebuild with, Your Highness. Nira closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her people's extinction settle on her shoulders. Then Dex's voice came through the static again, gentle and sure. We'll find another way, he said. We always do. And floating there in the wreckage of 2 civilizations, one evil, one lost, Nira began to believe that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer the darkness between the stars. The Lumanian race might be gone, but their legacy would live. On in the choice she'd made, to save the galaxy rather than preserve the past. It was, she realized, exactly what her people would have wanted.